One woman has not only distinguished herself as a great entrepreneur in today's fiercely competitive market, but she has also demonstrated her ability to compete and outlast industry behemoths like Microsoft and Adobe. Melanie Perkins, the co-founder of Canva, is unquestionably that woman. Despite having no connections to Silicon Valley, no technical training, and more than 100 rejections from investors, Melanie Perkins never gave up on her original concept. In today's video, we'll discuss the eventful story of Australian billionaire Melanie Perkins, who went from multiple rejections to multiple investors. Melanie Perkins was born in 1988 in Perth, in Western Australia. Her parents are of mixed heritage. Her mother is Australian by birth, and her father is a Malaysian of Filipino and Sri Lankan ancestry. Perkins' dream of being an entrepreneur began at a young age. At the age of 14, she had already started making scarves and selling them to markets and shops in Perth, Australia. A few years later, when Perkins was only 19 years old and a student at the University of Western Australia, she came up with the concept for Canva. When she was training her university friends in design programs, she discovered that the majority of the programs were pricey, complicated, and inaccessible. She also observed how challenging it was for people to learn how to utilize tools like Adobe Photoshop. She therefore envisioned a straightforward, collaborative, and virtual future for design. She told CNBC that people would have to spend an entire semester learning where the buttons were, and that seemed completely ridiculous. I thought that in the future it was all going to be online and collaborative and much simpler than these really hard tools. However, Perkins and her co-founder Cliff Obrecht didn't begin with the design software since they lacked the resources or technical know-how to address that issue right away. Instead, they concentrated their efforts through their company Fusion Yearbooks on a specialized product category, high school yearbooks. Why yearbooks? Since Perkins' mother was a teacher, she was able to witness the time and effort her mother put into each yearbook. So Melanie and Cliff wanted to build a software that made creating yearbooks simpler. Schools would pay for printed copies of the yearbook, but the software would be free. Cliff and Melanie, however, did not know how to code, so they sought out Greg Mitchell of In-Depth, who did. The team then hired In-Depth to create the initial version of Fusion Books with a $50,000 Australian dollar friends and family loan. From the comfort of her mother's living room, this company provided online services for printing and designing school yearbooks. The company became so successful, and Perkins even dropped out of college. Within 5 years, Fusion Books had surpassed all of its rivals and was the most popular yearbook supplier in Australia. But Perkins wasn't satisfied with just this. She had a bigger goal in mind: to make graphic design simple and available to everyone. Fusion Books was doing very well, but Cliff and Melanie needed money for growth and expansion, so they wanted to enlist the aid of venture capitalists. However, no one was willing to support or believe in the concept. Fusion Books changed their name to Canva Inc. around this time. It was initially quite difficult for Perkins and Obrecht to secure finance from investors, but in 2011 they had the chance to meet with renowned investor Bill Tai. Perkins, though, felt out of place in Silicon Valley. She wore too much clothing to appear professional. She didn't use an iPhone or an iPad, and she printed her pitch deck rather than using a laptop. Surprisingly, the meeting went well, but they were not given any funding by Tai. Instead, they received frequent invitations to kitesurfing events where many other tech investors also attended. At Mai Tai, the exclusive retreat for investors and kitesurfing lovers, Tai, an enthusiastic kitesurfer, was eager for Perkins and Obrecht to start networking. So Perkins had to quickly pick up the sport, but she quickly learned that forging new connections with Silicon Valley was not easy. But after more than 100 rejections and countless fruitless trips to Silicon Valley, she discovered her first investors. Yes, Perkins was rejected more than 100 times by investors. The rejecting investors gave reasons like their headquarters was located far in Australia, they had no experience at MIT, Stanford or Harvard, and that Canva was too expensive. Perkins' pitch deck evolved significantly as a result. At one point, the company was even called Canvas Chef. The company officially began in 2013 with a few $1 million raised the year before. Cameron Adams and Dave Herndon are two tech co-founders who Perkins and Obrecht were able to find with the aid of their tech advisor and Google Maps co-founder Lars Rasmussen. The company was oversubscribed at the closing of its first investment round a few months later. The Australian government even gave a $1.5 million investment in an effort to keep the business on Australian soil. When the website launched the next year, users could create a variety of online designs without charge. The list of investors grew swiftly when the design platform went live and demonstrated profitability through a subscription model for premium services. The team acquired an additional $3 million by the end of March 2013 from a number of American private equity firms and angel investors, including Ty and Rasmussen. Anyone who had any doubts about Canva's ability to succeed could see its promise with the 750,000 users it had at the end of 2013. Since then, the company has grown tremendously. Canva generated sales of $23.5 million in both the 2016 and 2017 fiscal years, and $86.3 million in the 2018 and 2019 fiscal year. In only 2019 alone, the company made $291 million in sales. Canva claimed $1 billion in revenue in 2021, which is twice that it was in 2020. The company now anticipates sales in 2022 to exceed $1 billion. Canva's future is promising, with 120 new designs being added every second and more than 7 billion designs made there so far. More than 75 million users from more than 190 nations now make use of Canva each month to unleash their creativity and accomplish their objectives. The service is now used by everyone who designs, from small company owners to teachers, students, content creators, and teams of all sizes. 9 years later, the Sydney-based business is now valued at $40 billion, giving Perkins and her co-founder and now husband, Cliff Obrecht, an estimated $6.5 billion in personal wealth. And to think it all began with a high school yearbook publishing company. And we are very sure that Perkins is just getting started, since she's just 34 years old. Please remember to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up before you leave. You can also check our video about Whitney Wolfe Herd, another woman who became a self-made billionaire. Bye!